The Cronulla Sharks have become a fan favourite in the modern game, with a strong history and a plethora of incredible names coming through the club. Founded in '63, then known as the Cronulla-Sutherland Sharks, before officially being hailed as Cronulla-Sutherland Sharks upon joining the NRL in 1967, competing in every competition since joining the NRL. They have appeared in 4 grand finals, winning their first one in 2016, but more on that later. Carrying on into the 21st century, Cronulla has gone through every spectacular high and low that a club can possibly go through, going from wooden spooners to Premiership winners. Shark fans have really gone through it all, but no challenge was quite like the one they faced in 2013, the scandal which rocked the rugby league landscape and Australian sport to its core.
Found the use of prohibited substances, including peptides, hormones, and
they admit they've
illicit
done the wrong
drugs,
thing.
is widespread
I think
amongst professional
that's
athletes.
good.
We're dominating sport at the moment. That is the alleged wide-scale use of performance-enhancing drugs.
In 2010, former coach Ricky Stewart would leave, and Shane Flanagan was there to pick up the pieces. The following year of 2011 was another unsuccessful season for the Sharks. The Sharks would end up being 13th that year, copping only 7 wins in their 24 games. That year, Paul Gallen was the captain. The club's centre, Ben Pomeroy, would finish as the club's highest try scorer, scoring 9 tries. And the leading point scorer would be the journeyman John Williams. However, the next season he would retire. Your average league fan wouldn't bat an eyelid at this very average year for the club. Unbeknownst to everyone though, there was something much more sinister behind closed doors. 2012 would write a different story. The Sharks would finish 7th, with a record of 12 wins and 11 losses. However, were beat by David Furner's Canberra Raiders, 34-16. In the off-season, however, 2013 was a year for Cronulla to turn around their form. They would welcome the likes of Jonathan Wright, Michael Gordon, Chris Hennington, fan favourite Beau Ryan, and Australian representative Luke Lewis. The anticipation for the Sharks would grow. However, this would all come crashing down just weeks before the round 1 kickoff. The Australian Crimes Commission would release a damning report entitled Organised Crimes and Drugs in Sports, in what was known as the blackest day in Australian sport. The report revealed a number of illicit drugs being used amongst professional athletes. It was alleged that sports scientists, coaches, support staffs, doctors and pharmacists were all involved. As a result, all major leagues around the country were investigated, including the NRL. This would affect the Sharks franchise as they were one of the 6 clubs mentioned in this report. They had been accused of serious doping allegations, and immediately launched an internal investigation into the matter, hiring senior counsel Richard Redmond to advise them through the process, which ASADA boss Richard Ings said was the best credentialed lawyer in the anti-doping space in Australia. It was revealed in the investigation that controversial sports scientist Stephen Dank had worked with the Sharks over a 5-month period during 2011. If you're wondering why this is so significant, it's because 2 days before, Stephen Dank had launched defamation cases against several media outlets, alleging he was falsely accused of selling illegal substances to sports people. During Dank's time with the Sharks, there were interestingly no invoices for the supplements he supplied to the club. As well as that, Stephen Dank allegedly wasn't even paid. It was alleged that the Cronulla board only learned about Dank's position at the club weeks before the investigation. However, Richard Ings questioned this, stating, to have someone in such a position of being able to treat players without them being formally on the books or formally acknowledged as being on the books is extremely unusual and highly unlikely. I find it very difficult to believe that someone would work gratis in providing treatment to elite professional sporting athletes, end quote. Dank would also be charged with being heavily involved in the Essendon Bombers drug scandal just a year later. Coach Shane Flanagan would immediately release a statement, claiming to club officials they had nothing to worry about as Dank was not involved with any of the players and had no contact with players during his stint at the club. It was revealed just the next day. The club and the ASADA officially launched their investigation into the matter, all the while denied the distribution of any illegal performance-enhancing drugs, stating, the Sharks can confirm that none of their players have tested positive to performance-enhancing substances. Beau Ryan, who we mentioned earlier, notched a total of 22 appearances and scored 7 tries for the club. Before his retirement in 2014, whilst on the reality TV show I'm a Celebrity Get Me Out of Here, Ryan had opened up on what he described as a saga that ripped the league apart. Ryan had stated that, we got called in at training one day, and the integrity unit was there, and the commission and all these people. And they said, you've seen the news? This is going to be one of the darkest days in sport. Something happened at this club in regards to doping and stuff. Be honest and tell us what happened, because they got ya. On the 15th of February, Shane Flanagan would retract his previous statements regarding Dank's involvement with the club, after reportedly realising Dank had been injecting players with 2 growth hormones, CJC 1295 and GHRP6. Flanagan additionally stated he ordered the cessation of these practices after becoming privy to them. After 2 weeks of further investigation, on March 7th, the day marking the beginning of the 2013 season, 14 unnamed players were impacted as users of banned substances. They were offered a 6-month suspension if they chose to immediately admit their guilt, or hold off to continue the investigation, leaving them liable up to 2 years of the game if found guilty, which would see those senior members forced into retirement. All 14 players, however, declined an early guilty plea, and betting was halted on the Sharks' opening round. March 8th saw the indefinite suspension of head coach Shane Flanagan, and would be replaced by Peter Sharp. Flanagan would tell the media, "I'm shattered, none of us had any knowledge of what was happening." The Rugby League Players Association would come out in support of Cronulla, releasing a statement stating, "Players should not be sanctioned for taking illicit or banned substances if they are unknowingly supplied to them." Richard Ings would respond to comments like this, stating that ignorance is no defence, and even if substances were taken unknowingly, punishments must be handed down. Ings would also further state if they've done something wrong and know they've done wrong, they've got to make a choice real quick, and would say if an athlete knew what they were doing, they can expect up to a 2-year ban. As investigations continued, Cronulla officials Mark Noakes, David Givney, Conrad Schultz and Darren Mooney were immediately sacked by the club for their knowledge and involvement in the scandal. Mooney is no longer registered to be involved with rugby league at any level. It was reported that Cronulla players were introduced to Stephen Dank by Flanagan, Noakes and high performance manager Trent Elkin, being told to work with him and trust him. Dank, Flanagan and Elkin would give false information to players about the substances they were going to be given, stating they were permitted for use in sports. There was reportedly no record of injections being given to players. However, Dank stated that, "I suspect the records were there, like I left at every football club," revealing he had allegedly provided Elkin with a list of all treatments administered. Elkin would refute this, stating there were no such records kept. On the same day, the Sharks announced the new chief executive for the interim, former Broncos boss, Bruno Cullen. Shockingly, during this time, a group of leading Sharks players, including Paul Gallen, are accused of intimidation. Allegedly, they would arrive at trainer Trent Elkin's house and ask him about his involvement with the investigation and his cooperation with the ASADA. Richard Ings would slam these players, stating, "I have to say, those Cronulla players who went to visit the trainer, I thought that was absolutely outrageous. That is borderline intimidation of the witness. Those players need to stand down and let the process take its course, and not interfere with anybody who is seeking to bring forward information." On March 10th, an acute silver lining emerges as Cronulla wins their first round of the season against the Gold Coast Titans, 12-10. Andrew Fafita and Matthew Wright would score, and Michael Gordon would convert both tries. Peter Sharp would provide a glimmer of hope in a pool of despair for Sharks fans, that he could keep the club afloat during this period. Skipper Paul Gallen said in the post-match interview, "I couldn't wait to play. It was 80 minutes where all them blokes got to do what we do best and play footy, and forget about all the crap that is going on, so it was the best part of the week." Cronulla 5'8" Todd Carney said the team was in high spirits during their recovery session, the day after the match, stating, "It's like every team in the NRL. Everyone's back to work on Monday, that's what we're going to do." Explosive allegations are unearthed, with Cronulla chairman Damien Irvine alleging that players were injected with equine substances. Irvine spoke to the Sunday Telegraph sports editor at large, Phil Rothfield. After Rothfield called for Irvine to stand down, Irvine responded with, "Mate, when paid staff fail to report injecting players with equine substances, I can't help. Players deserve professional support, not people who risk their careers." By mentioning paid staff, it could be surmised that Irvine was referring to Dank, implying that his payments may have been off the books as he was not officially registered with the club. When Rothfield inquired about what these substances were, Irvine stated, "I'm told there was bottles of tablets with a sticker that said, 'not for human use.' It was believed that the substance was TV500, which aids horses in muscle growth, strength and endurance, but this has not been confirmed." Club chairman Damien Irvine quits his position as chairman after fronting the media amid the scandal to help the club rebuild with a clean slate. Irvine made damning comments about the situation, implying that he was aware of what was going on. He seemed to still be on Cronulla's side in the issue, stating, "To be blindsided, which I was by all of that, I don't think they were at fault at all in 2011. They got done by a 3-card trick, with the best of intentions to try and improve the club. They dropped the ball in terms of checks and measures. To go through all that work and build it back up, and then to come up in 2013 was devastating." Irvine would then go on to apologise to Rothfield, stating, "I shouldn't have made them at the time. It was a middle of the night conversation. They came after some badgering. It wasn't some sensible comment to make and I take responsibility for it. One regret I do have, that could be inferred, those comments were made deliberately against the best interest of the players. I apologise for that." On March 20th, the Australian Rugby League Commission and the NRL announced that the ASADA intend to interview 31 Cronulla players. March 22nd, Flanagan is reinstated as head coach of the club, just 14 days after his indefinite suspension. Grant Thornton would clear Flanagan of any wrongdoing. Flanagan would front the media after his reappointment, describing the situation as terrible. "It's been hard on my family, friends and players, and that I'm glad we've been able to sort this out." Sacked team doctor David Givney and football manager Darren Mooney are both hospitalised for stress-related complaints. A close friend of Givney said he was a broken man and could barely get his words out, and when he did, all he could say was, "At my age, all you have left is your integrity," and now they have taken that all away. On March 27th of that year, Stephen Dank officially pursues legal action against Cronulla over allegations that players were injected with horse drugs. This was in reference to former Sharks chairman Damien Irvine saying players were injected with equine substances. Dank stated, "I have done nothing illegal with any club in the NRL. All this upsets me deeply because it is not true." Dank also states, "I'm not a doping scientist or a cheat." The matter would come to New South Wales Supreme Court on the 26th of April. Dank would ultimately lose his case. On April 3rd, Sharks hire former Roosters and Tigers chief executive Steve Noyce as general manager of football. Sharks chairman Glenn Coleman said Noyce's experience would be integral to the club as their future remained up in the air. Coleman would further state, "We are delighted with these appointments, which are a further step in building the most professional senior management team in rugby league." On April 26, the family of former Sharks player John Manor refuted claims that peptides were given to him during his time with Cronulla, which might have linked to his death. Manor passed away in January of 2013 after suffering a relapse of Hodgkin's lymphoma at the age of 23. He was first diagnosed with the illness in 2009 at the age of 19. News Corp journalists published independent articles stating they had identified causal links between the peptides and Manor's relapse into cancer. John's brother, Tim Manor, then released a statement against these claims, stating, "On behalf of my family, I'd like to say how disappointed we are by all the reports that have been published today. My brother Johnny was a wonderful man and never would ever consent to taking a banned substance. In fact, he was very careful about everything he did that may affect his health. Johnny's integrity and the way he lived speaks for itself. We have no need to defend that." Manor also offered his family support to Trent Elkin, saying, "We know Trent does not condone to the use of illegal substances and would have never knowingly done anything that would cause harm to one of his players, or John for that matter." The Parramatta Eels, who had been employing Elkin at the time, also released a statement about the articles, saying, "In all parts of life there are boundaries, lines in the sand that everyone understands. It is our belief that the Daily Telegraph today crossed that line. To put the Manor family through what they have been in the last 24 hours is an absolute disgrace." The statement was released as Elkin in addition to Dank were both accused of supplying peptides to players. On April 29th, 22-year-old young rising star and future captain Wade Graham is first of many players to be directly interviewed by the ASADA. This comes as the interview phase is about to begin. Bo Ryan spoke on how the investigation period impacted the team, with players being constantly pulled out of training to be interviewed, some being interviewed for up to 12 hours at a time. Ryan stated, "So it would be training and they'd go. Alright, 4 players, boom, straight into an interrogation with the ASADA. Graham reportedly refused to answer questions during his interview, and all player interviews are postponed. News Limited published a letter between Flanagan and club doctor David Givney, in which Givney reportedly inquired about what exactly players were given, but received vague responses about amino acids and vitamins. Givney then raised his concerns with Flanagan regarding Dank's practices, however was dismissed and eventually accepted the suspect practices. Former CEO spoke on Givney's questioning during a conversation with Phil Rothfield. When Rothfield asked Givney to initially raise a concern, Givney confirmed he did. He then went on to state, "He's got a duty of care over players. That doesn't mean when someone makes the wrong decision, they can't be held accountable." On May 16th, Sharks chairman Glenn Coleman officially quits his position at the club, just 2 months into the job. This paved the way for former Olympic basketballer Damien Carr to take the top job. Coleman stated, "I'm handing over to a dynamic new group of directors. They've got to get their head around the ASADA issue, and then move forward from here. I have no doubt that long term, the club is going to be fine." On June 29th, Cronulla would backflip on the sacking of Mark Noakes, Darren Mooney, David Givney and Conrad Schultz. Noakes was officially reinstated, and talks begin with Mooney about a possible return. An official statement was reached with Givney and Schultz, as their jobs had already been filled. Cronulla would then publicly retract their statements regarding the 4 men, as they had caused damage to their reputations, offering full apology for any damage and the effect on their families. They stated, "We publicly retract the statements made by the club which may have caused damage to the reputations of Dr. David Givney, Conrad Schultz, Mark Noakes and Darren Mooney." Interim CEO Bruno Cullen quits just 144 days after joining the club. On August 9th, Graham is interviewed for the second time, 3 months after the investigators postponed the inquiry. He is the last of 5 players interviewed just that week. On the 30th of August, 23-year-old Canberra winger Sander Earl is the first player to openly admit to using banned substances, and was handed an infraction notice and a provisional suspension. The NRL had reportedly indicated that Earl could be facing up to 4 years or even a life ban for rugby league, with David Smith indicating that Earl's suspension serves as a precedent for all others involved, stating, Today's development reinforces the position we have taken from the outset and highlights our resolve in dealing with what are serious issues. And on November 21st, the ASADA officially completes their investigation into the Cronulla-Sutherland saga. This information was not made public, and mass fines, suspension, and punishments were about to be handed out. On the 17th of December, the NRL officially begins delegating punishment after the investigation is officially complete. In a press conference with the NRL media, Dave Smith announced Cronulla will be facing maximum penalties. The club is fined $1 million. Shane Flanagan is suspended for 12 months, and head club trainer Trent Elkin is deregistered from the game. Shane Flanagan also faced a potential 3-month suspension, pending further conditions from the NRL. Cronulla would continue to deny all the allegations, with Chief Executive Steve Noyce stating, "It should be noted that it is our intention to vigorously defend these charges." The clubs will also support coach Shane Flanagan regarding the provisional findings against him. Dave Smith stated that provisional findings of the investigation found that Flanagan and Elkin had exposed his players to significant health risks, as the substance in question, CJC 1295, was not even approved for use on humans. Smith further stated, "We will not accept practices that put our players at risk. Before any final determination is made, I will give full consideration to the contents of any response made by the club." The deadline for the club to respond to the punishments was January 15th of 2014. Flanagan released a statement describing how he was going to fight the decision until I am exonerated and my reputation is totally restored. Club captain Paul Gallen came out in support of his coach, mentioning how Flanagan was essential in running the club at one point during 2011. He also went on to say, "We had no CEO, no recruitment officers for juniors or seniors, very little people in the marketing department, and Flanagan was all across this, trying to raise money." Both Flanagan and Elkin appealed the punishments in early 2014, but were quickly dismissed and their suspensions stood, with Smith believing he had found no reason to alter the punishments handed down, stating, "I've been able to make a final determination, and the information I received post the 17th of December preliminary findings does not lead me to change the findings." On April 2nd, Flanagan's role as a coach would be extended in a 3-year contract, keeping him at Cronulla until 2017. Due to his suspension, he is unable to have any involvement with the club, but would commence his coaching duties once his time out of the game is served. Sharks chief executive Steve Noyce claims Flanagan is the right man to lead the club, stating, "Shane will play a pivotal role in the development of football operations and in delivery of sustained and continued success of the Sharks." Club captain Paul Gallen welcomed the news, stating Flanagan is respected by all the players and staff. He is the leader of our club. On July 1st, interim coach Peter Sharp resigns from his position at Cronulla, effective immediately. He made this decision claiming, "I think the decision I've made to step down is in the best interest of the club." Captain Paul Gallen would go on to criticise Sharp for not giving 100% effort, stating, "To me, players are like school kids. If you can turn up Monday and the coach isn't going to rouse on you for not having a good game, I don't think you're going to put 100% in." Several players, some current and some retired from the 2011 squad, in addition to 5 members of the then current 2014 squad, were issued show cause notices. For those who don't know, a show cause notice is essentially a court-ordered formal document setting out details of an alleged offence and punishment, giving the receiving party a chance to explain themselves or otherwise face consequences. The notice saw those who admitted guilt offered a 12-month suspension, with suspensions being backdated to November 21st, 2013. Almost instantly, most of those who were issued the notices accepted it, including club captain Paul Gallen. This ruled him out of the upcoming 2014 Rugby League Four Nations tournament at the end of the season. 5 players did not accept these conditions, but more on that later. Accepting the ban would mean players have already served 7 rounds worth of suspensions, and will be out for the rest of the season, only missing 19 rounds out of a potential 26. The backdating was revealed to be due to being justified by the delays in the process, which could not be and were not attributed to any action or lack of action on the part of players. The players who were issued show cause notices by the ASADA under Sports Minister Peter Dutton were Paul Gallen, Nathan Gardner, Wade Graham, Anthony Tupou, Jeremy Smith, Luke Douglas, Albert Kelly, Cade Snowden, and Matthew Wright. This suspension would end Luke Douglas's 215 consecutive game streak from his debut. On the 30th of September, the World Anti-Doping Agency issued a statement on behalf of Cronulla in regards to punishments handed down. They made it abundantly clear that Sharks had no intentions of appealing the sanctions imposed by the ASADA on the players, saying, "WADA is of the view that an appeal would not advance the fight against doping in any meaningful way." The statement would further read that the club had acknowledged the accepted breaches carry a potential sanction of 2 years. On the 31st of October, Shane Flanagan's suspension was officially lifted, with the NRL being satisfied that all conditions required to lift the ban, including the completion of training courses and a demonstration of his understandings of the obligations required of a head coach. The NRL has been impressed with Mr. Flanagan's commitment to meeting the conditions set down for his return, said the NRL's then head of integrity, Nick Weeks. Flanagan revealed how he better understood his role in protecting the welfare of players and those staff under his care, and mentioned how he had now intended to focus on the future and demonstrate that he was the right person to lead the cultural change of the Sharks. 5 Cronulla players who did not accept the original 12-month suspension dealt in August of 2014 were issued violation notices. Former players Paul Ayton, Colin Best, Stuart Flanagan, Ben Pomeroy, and John Williams all accepted 12-month suspensions, which were backdated and had expired, meaning they wouldn't miss any football. They refused to accept the initial deal, which they had described as doped and duped. Ayton had recently signed a 3-year contract extension with French-based Super League Catalan side, whilst Pomeroy was playing for the semi-professional Les Zingan Sanglers. Colin Best and John Williams had both retired by the time they accepted their suspensions. This officially marked the end of the supplements saga at the club. 2015 was the year for Cronulla to forget the past and move towards a brighter future. 2014 was an absolute atrocious season, arguably the worst in the club's history, with Cronulla finishing dead last on 14 points with 5 wins and 19 losses. Flanagan had officially been reinstated as head coach and would welcome Ben Barber, Michael Ennis, Mitch Brown, Jason Bukaya, and Jared Beale, and would work together to make a comeback season. Although suffering major injuries throughout the 2013 season, as well as being stood down for various disciplinary infractions, Barber's 2014 season gave Cronulla fans hope that he could return back to his former glory. Barber balled out in his first and only year with the Brisbane Broncos, playing all 25 matches of the season and notching an impressive 8 tries, including 3 against Newcastle, around 22. Michael Ennis was also coming off an incredible year, as his transfer to Cronulla spelled the end of his 136-game tenure with the Bulldogs. He notched a classy 4 tries and 8 try assists in 27 appearances, captaining the Dogs to a 7th place finish. Barber and Ennis were seen as the major signings of the year. Despite the build-up, the start of the season was abysmal for the Blue and Whites, losing the first 4 matches of the season. Just like the year before, Cronulla would sit dead last. However, they would encounter a hit of form, winning the next 4 out of 6 before their bye in round 11. Valentine Holmes was balling out, leading the team with 6 tries to his name. Cronulla would then lose round 12 by a whopping 36 points to St George, before beating the Roosters by 6, as they yet again had a bye in round 14. This bye would spur the run of football that propelled Cronulla into the top 8 and into finals contention. Cronulla would end the season as 6th place, with 14 wins and 10 losses. The surprising resurgence seen in the second half of the season gave Cronulla faithful that they could make a quality push into the finals. Cronulla would cruise past South Sydney in the first round of the finals, with tries from Jack Bird, Wade Graham, Sam Taganese, and Anthony Tupou, in addition to a perfect 6-6 conversion rate from Michael Gordon. Cronulla would move on to the semi-finals. This is where everything would come crashing down. North Queensland would run riot over Cronulla, embarrassing them 39-0 in Townsville in front of 21,000 Queensland faithful. Although Cronulla's season would capitulate, fans were left with the silver lining of a structure being built within the club, destined for eventual success. After a quality 2015 season, Cronulla quickly saw the departures of Arona, Ashford, Gordon, Robson, and Anthony Tupou, freeing up cap space for the club. Cronulla then welcomed a plethora of incredible talent to the club. Chad Townsend and James Maloney both joined the club, providing much needed firepower to the team's offense. James Maloney would come off his incredible 2015 season, finishing as the NRL's leading try scorer with 250 points, while boasting 7 tries, 20 assists, and 2 field goals in 27 appearances. Not only would Maloney provide insane offense to Cronulla, but would aid in a leadership role with the club. Cronulla would see quite a lacklustre beginning of the 2016 season, losing 2 out of their 3 first rounds. They would then go on to have the greatest run in club history, going undefeated for the next 17 rounds, boasting 15 wins and 2 byes, shooting them up to first by round 20. They would then encounter a subpar form, which featured 4 losses, a bye and a draw against the Gold Coast. Despite this, Cronulla was sat confidently in the top 4, finishing 3rd with 39 points. The Sharks would then come up against the 2nd place Canberra Raiders in the qualifying final. Chad Townsend would be taken away from the field after being knocked out by Josh Papali'i, denting the confidence of the Sky Blues. Chad Townsend would then cross the line, however would heartbreakingly have his try disallowed due to a knock-on. Canberra would draw first blood, after Josh Hodgson miraculously caught a rebound ball and ran right under the post, scoring the first 4-pointer. Josh Rapana would then track the full length of the field after picking up a loose ball to score Canberra's 2nd and raise their lead to 12. Matt Pryor would accept a bullet pass from Michael Ennis off the ruck to crash over Cronulla's 1st and cut the lead 12-6 at halftime. Raiders hooker Josh Hodgson was then taken from the field after suffering a hit from his teammate's leg just 2 minutes in the second half. Canberra then slotted a penalty goal to put them ahead by 8. Luke Lewis then played an incredible grubber to the right wing, finding Valentine Holmes, who would score his 19th of the season and shut the lead down in just 2. Jack Wyman was then penalised for staying on the rock too long as Cronulla slotted a penalty goal, levelling the score at 14-14 in the 66th minute. The Raiders would then attempt a field goal in the 72nd minute, however Aiden's attempt would fly just shy of the right post. A controversial high tackle was then called against Canberra, as Maloney slotted the field goal, seeing Cronulla get the edge over Canberra, with the score sat at 16-14. The Sharks would then come up against a familiar foe in the North Queensland Cowboys in the preliminary finals. North Queensland had confidently bounced Cronulla out of the finals just a year earlier by almost 40 points, yet there was a new aura around this team. Cronulla would take an early lead, with tries from Kiwi winger Sosaya Fiki and halfback Chad Townsend giving the Sharks a confident 14-point lead at the half. The Cowboys would come out of the gates firing, with fullback Lachlan Coote scoring in just the 42nd minute. This failed to deter a Cronulla team starving for Premiership success, with Luke Lewis scoring just 9 minutes later, before James Maloney crashed over for a pair of tries. This match seemed wrapped up, with Cronulla set to walk away as victors. However, Cowboys winger Kyle Felt would score 2 magnificent tries to cut the lead, before Colin Hess scored just 2 minutes away from the buzzer. Although victory seemed impossible, the dream was still alive. Unfortunately, it would be a little too late for the Cowboys, with Cronulla taking out the monumentous victory and progressing to the biggest stage of them all. The stage was set. Paul Gallen's Cronulla, the underdogs, the redemption story of the league, do or die, against Cam Smith's Melbourne, the Invincibles, one of the greatest teams of all time. 83,000 spectators packed out ANZ Stadium as the players took to the field. The game exploded in just the 5th minute, with every fan's dream. A bit of biff. A high shot from Melbourne winger Marika Koroibete saw Cronulla gifted a penalty goal right in front of the sticks. Michael Ennis then decided to grab him by the neck and tell him exactly how he was feeling. The entirety of both teams would get involved in the scuffle, before Maloney slotted the penalty goal, giving Cronulla the early 2-point lead. Paul Gallen would then rush to the blind side of the scrum, headbutting Chad Townsend in the process, before hitting Ben Barber, who snuck through to notch Cronulla's first try of the match, extending their lead to 8 in just the 14th minute. The biff was back again in the 36th minute, as Cam Smith knocked the ball on just metres off his own line, with Ennis giving some encouraging pats on the back. Both teams would run in for yet another scuffle, which closed out the first half. As the second half began, Melbourne would get a sniff at the try line, with Kenny Bromwich crossing over in the 49th minute on the crash play. The score would sit at 8-6. Will Chambers would cross in the 63rd minute after incredible build-up play from the Storm, which gave them a 12-8 lead. As play continued, Andrew Fafita would famously burst through 5 Melbourne defenders to crash over the line, and somehow planted the ball over his head in the 73rd minute. As the siren sounded, Melbourne made one last-ditch effort before Koroibete was tackled, and then elation. Years of turmoil, loss, despair, uncertainty, and pain all washed away in a sea of glory. The crowd roared tears of happiness. Exhaustion and bewilderment hit the hallowed turf of ANZ. Cronulla had defied all odds, coming from genuine nothingness, seeming obscurity, to getting it done on the biggest stage of them all. They had done it. The dream became a reality, and this team, and the club forever, was immortalised in the history of the greatest game of all.
Playing fantastic. I mean, have a look at them, fantastic.